så sleit jeg litt da, for det var liksom, skal det være bindestrek, eller skal det være nord-øst?
Ja, det står et eksempel der.
Ja, det sto ingenting egentlig, det var bare liksom GPS-koordinat.
Oui, parce que je trouve pas le compendium Je croyais que c'était dans le fileholder, mais je ne trouve pas.
Jeg vil ikke Google, finner ikke her.
Je crois, des notes de l'année. Oh, where is it?
De ligger på sprøyt på nesen. Det er merkelig. Nei, det er snart...
Je trouve pas, oui, est-ce que tu peux le téléphoner parce que je trouve pas. Oh oui, il a peut-être parti quelque part, je sais pas. Ok.
Ja, men vi kan ikke komme senere, jeg har sett hvis du kjenner måltiden.
Kanskje det skal vise for sånn.
Jeg tenkte møte for neste kvartal. Og vi kan starte typ altså slett for ja. Åh, jeg ble begynt deg.
Ouais, c'est ça. Jeg kommer ikke av det.
Det verste er at de
Yeah, hi, Jonathan.
For ikke alltid det husker meg at jeg får vite.
I think there's a problem. I was trying to fill menus right now. Did you exchange phone?
Hvis det er riktig, da er det faktisk bra.
I was really wondering what was happening right now. Bonjour, monsieur. I'm in the classroom right now. Karen is searching for a companion on the net. Do you know?
Hi. Is it Norwis? Oh, good. Listen, I'm trying to find the complaint about how to write a master's thesis on the BIO300 site. I know I've put it up there, but now I can't find it. It doesn't say it's under lecture notes. Are there 2 pages for lecture notes? Have I not gone far enough down? Is that what it is? Yeah, I know.
De er oppdatert på hva folk gjør da, for du... Nei, da, jeg var ikke. Jeg skrev ikke jo, men hun først.
It was uploaded right at the very beginning. That's why I'm wondering if there's 2 pages for this.
Valgte selv som hver fag.
I mean, the first thing I see under lecture notes is the second of
Oh, it's not number.
No, I didn't think we'd do that.
Hej, är det människa? Ingen.
No, I want a compendium. Lecture notes? Well, if we did, I don't see it. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
I hvert fall nå når jeg ikke tør å lese. To jenter har blitt kjent med deg, som er veldig hyggelig. Faen, jeg har fått jobba med dem en gang. Altså, de skravler. Også når jeg ikke deltar, når jeg sitter på så veldig på skolen.
There it is. Thank you.
Janne.
Okay, thanks.
Og jeg
Thank you.
Finishing around 10.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Okay. Right.
Så gjør jo det. Altså, jeg synes jo det er helt klart at de teater ikke åpnet meg, pikket meg på skulderen. Jeg sa hei til deg når jeg kom inn. Eller, og så setter jeg skriver, og så synes jeg bare, hei, hva sier hvilken bin? Så det er jo ikke noe skjønt med.
Det er skikkelig, vi pleier å skole sånn. Okay, well, good morning. You are so many here, I am overwhelmed. But I'll just take a roll call just to prove this here. Jennifer, Cassandra, Prakash, this is looking good. Osna, Sarah, Marie, Orlean, this is gonna be good. Hilda, Hassan, Vega, yeah. Gudni, yeah. Oh, there you are. Sigrid, no. Kat, there we go. Egor, no. Ingrid, Andreas, no. Prakash, hello. Good morning, Prakash. Sigve, Nicholas, Ingelin, Daniela, right. Winnie, yeah. Jana, Vilde, Steve, no. Kanti, no. Mari, oh, there, yes. Hege, Hoa, no. Sondra, no. Carlotte, Evan, hello. Janova, hello. Tan, there we go. Sissa, Marek, not yet. Lynn, Torborg, Olina, yeah. Sondra, the other. Okay. Hannah, no. Mari, Jocelyn, and Tuna, and Chris. Good morning. Okay. What's happening that there's so few? I hear there's a field course, but what's happening? Huh? It is a field course?
Yeah, I think they're in Espegrand.
Oh, okay.
For 2
okay.
weeks.
For 2 weeks, right? Okay. Then there's a couple of things to tell you. We're going to go through and start building up the structure of the introduction. And today, some of you, about 4 groups, have got meetings with other people today, and you should have gotten the information from at least one of your group members. Okay. And I'll be there for the first meetings, so I hope that all of them are ready to go. And in fact, the first meetings are, let's see, Olina, yeah, you're at 11, so I'll be there for that. And then Chris, you and your group will have something at 3:30.
Yes.
Trygve, you and your group is 5:30, and then Vega, you and your group is at 12. Okay. And I know you're not going to be that many, but that's okay, just to get it started. Okay. And then for the introduction, has anybody started writing it? Right. Okay. And I'm going to be going through your results, so that you get an idea. Sorry, I'm going to go through your results to find out where your story goes. But the way to start to build the introduction is to figure out what your results say and what they are in context with. And so this means actually, if you're sitting by your group, or if you're not sitting by your group member, find them, talk to them for about 3 minutes, and then I'm going to be asking you, what do your results say? And in this plenum kind of way of doing this, you'll start to see now the differences between all of you, and you'll start to see as well how these things can turn and change the aspect of it. So this is literally a workshop class. And this means we'll be working on your results. This is not in theory. We'll be working on your results and start to put them into the context of an introduction. And just so that you, let me see if I can get this on in time. There's, of course, it's not going to go my way. Let's see if it'll go. Eventually it'll come on there. So get together with your group. I'll give you 3 minutes to start talking about what your results actually say. And then I'll be wanting you to tell us. Yeah, literally. Sit down, talk, and find out what your results, because you wrote them. Now what do they say? And I want you to tell me. Tell us now. Yeah, Chris, I think you're alone. So you can say anything, and nobody will argue against you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. So it's not high wall.
Anytime?
Only lower.
Yeah. Silence there. Do we have a result?
Yeah. Yeah, but we can talk about it.
So basically,
Low amount of nitrites in the river.
yeah. So that's the only problem.
Not any variation in biodiversity.
Not that much biodiversity. That's a big thing.
According to the biological quality of the river was fair or low or something, and same quality for both. The Shannon Diversity Index, I don't know, because that was the boys. Yeah, the oxygen amount, I don't know if it was important. If it's normal, I don't know.
And we also had did you have quite pure water, also low nitrate, low E. coli, low phosphor? Do you like that? Or what's it? No animals?
It was some animals.
And we did not found the significant change between the E. coli number and then phosphorus number.
No. One sample is
Biodiversity is poor water quality, but
You haven't been to the at all?
building.
So, as far as I know, there's not a lot of E. coli, not a very high level of phosphorus.
So pretty much it's too bad for
Yeah, and I think that that river is good for mussels from our result probably.
Yes, so we have one uncertainty for oxygen.
Oh yeah.
It's been the milestone before.
Yeah, we don't have results for sediment oxygen.
So that will just be a discussion part. The rest was fairly good, I think.
Yeah.
There were fish, there are animals.
Yeah, that was the last site.
Now we had more fish. The fish shot too. That's what I had. I don't remember. We had 2 types of fish.
I would say that I haven't looked into the biodiversity that much. According to the classification, it was that is just a measurement. I think it's more important with the Shannon Index, but I haven't Although we found a lot of analyzing the results. I mean, the number of organisms in the water is quite high, but some biodiversity index is not.
There's no oops button on the screen going up and down.
Our group had some student meeting, bracket, 12 students. Where is it?
In the cantina, without cafeteria, where we always sit.
In cafeteria? Okay.
Or outside, I don't know, but where we always sit at least.
Okay. Because I have a class of 2 to 12.
To 12 or after?
No, 2 to 12.
Oh, 10 to 12?
Yeah, and it's in India.
Yeah, but just come when you come. I guess this is just like, hey, hello, my name is Jerry. Ja, men ska du gå till lägenhet? Eller får leka sig till oss? Kom bort. Ja. Ja.
Det är så klassiskt då. Jag har 2 föreläsningar i
Okay, well, I'm waiting for the machinery to agree with me. Have you decided what your results say? Have you? Okay, we can start with you guys. Tell me what you found. Tell me what you think you found.
Well, we found elevated levels of E. coli from one particular stream,
Okay,
called the mystery stream.
right?
And yeah, that one kind of stood out.
Yeah.
And also we found elevated levels of phosphorus at one sample site.
Mm-hmm.
And also quite 4 biodiversity findings. Few species.
Right. Okay, is that what you found,
Yeah,
basically?
basically, yeah.
Okay. Chris?
Well, our group found that the highest value of TCB and phosphorus are all found inside C.
Inside what?
C. Yeah.
Is that the right site?
No. Oh yes.
This one?
Yes.
Okay. TCB is in,
TCB and phosphorus are all the highest value of TCB and phosphorus.
yeah.
Are all found in this site. But we have in this place we have 3 different sites.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. And that's basically what you found.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah.
And then let's go to Bishalandsvan. Who's got that place? Yeah?
We found that E. coli is quite slow.
Okay.
Concentration of E. coli is low. It means that water quality is very good.
Mm-hmm.
But and phosphorus and nitrous is both of them is not so high.
All right.
Yeah, but biodiversity is quite poor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because TCB and phosphorus nitrous results
Mm-hmm.
don't support for biodiversity results, so we have a question. We list a lot of questions
Right.
here.
Okay.
As how maybe it's maybe because we didn't take a good job or something happened. And I think we think we need to to find more information about the way to, yes, and how to explain our results.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Actually, that'll be right back on the side. How about this group? Sandy Becky, where are you? Okay.
I think in general have
Sorry, missionary.
I think we in general have better results than last year.
Okay.
Better quality.
Yeah, but
Yes.
in both QVC and phosphate and
Yeah, but what is it? What did you find? If you said better than last year, is it still good? Was it horrible last year and it's only bad now?
We had some weird data for bacteria last year.
Right.
So we won't be too certain when you say that it's better, but we had some extreme data for one of the sample sites last year, so at least that's
Okay.
better.
But your sites, your results, what are they? Your results, not last year's. Your results, what are they?
Most of them, except for phosphorus, I think, is within what the environmental agency considers to be healthy levels for freshwater systems.
Okay.
And since
The phosphorus is what?
I think it's, I'm trying to find the file here. I think it's might be moderate or bad.
Okay. Sort of like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say? Low biodiversity, I'm sure.
It's pretty good two places, but in the sample site with more slow running water, it's more forward
Okay.
than some sites.
Okay. How about Haukås? Where we go? Yeah.
Well, all over we had a relatively, what should I say, pure water. We had low TCB, both in the mainstream but also in the side streams where the municipality previously knew they were pollution source. Also, there was, the same goes with phosphorus.
Okay.
They were also relatively low, except for one extremely high. And the biodiversity was also fairly low all over in the river. And we saw fish.
Oh wow, good. Yeah,
That's
good.
important for that river.
It is, it is, it is. Yes. Okay. Store Lyngegårdsvann.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, what'd you get?
So the TCB was very good. They were very low. We had a phosphor value which was about, I don't know, really high from previous years. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting. We also measured nitrogen, but we can't compare it to earlier years.
Yeah,
because
but that's
I haven't
okay.
done it.
Yeah.
And the biodiversity was also quite low, but that's more because our fault. We did some wrong planning, so should be higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Lille Lyngegårdsvann?
Yeah, we found a shift in the ecosystem. Because we were expecting cyanobacteria, but
Right,
we found
yeah.
nothing.
Right.
And we found an algae that's more an indicator of shift. And we do have a strong theory of why.
Well, actually, I passed on the message to your TA, and I don't know if she passed it on to you to go and
Yeah,
talk with.
Sondra has been in touch with them
Okay,
all
right.
along, so we know about. And we've also been in touch with the group that put out the trout last year.
Yeah.
So they sent us some information and yeah.
Right.
So
Oh, very
we're
good.
gonna have a case study on that as well.
That's really cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. Okay, Galpos? Do we have anybody from Galpos here today? Yeah?
It's pretty good. Everything. Phosphorus is below 25 and for all sites and below 40 for TVC.
So it's okay? All of it's okay? And the biodiversity?
It varied a bit between the sites, but that was expected.
Yeah.
So,
And biodiversity
so
low?
from like one of the sites were higher, so there were less TCB and phosphorus and had better results than the one sites that were lower down. So it was expected.
Yeah. Okay. Biodiversity low? Or?
No, it was quite high in some sites.
Oh, okay.
Site 1 more than 2 and 3.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we had 500 or something individuals.
Oh, not bad, not bad. Yeah. Okay. And Kalvetrevika, who's got that one? So nobody from Kalvetrevika here today? Okay. That's Jan's group. Nobody. Okay.
Sorry.
And that's you.
My group has some
No,
mistakes.
Jan.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our group, the TCP is very low, not the highest. Sorry. It's about 10 CFU 100 milliliters. So it's really very low.
Okay.
Sorry.
Right.
And
okay.
Yeah. And I have a question. For example, as to the benthos species.
The what? Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Biodiversity.
Yeah.
I don't know. We have the Sherman-Wiener. Yeah. We have H and D.
Yeah.
But how to compare if H is high and D is low? So I have 3 sites, and if for example, if the site 1, H is we imagine that H is 1 and D is 2.
Yeah.
And the second one, H is 2 and D is 0.5. So
Right.
how can we compare H and D?
It's going to be really difficult. They are independent. They're based on the same data, but they're calculated differently. Okay. And there it's up to you. It's not uncommon that you get at least one index that is different from all the others, and then you have to say why it's different and which ones you want to put your emphasis on. The most important would be, for example, if one index says this biodiversity is really good,
Yes.
and the other says it's really bad,
Yeah.
then probably, but not probably, there is 1 or 2 key species in there that have a major role in the high biodiversity index and are almost overlooked in the low biodiversity index. So it depends on what they put the emphasis on. And it's actually very common that the biodiversity indices don't agree. We usually get at least 2 groups a year whose various calculations for the different biodiversity indices, they don't agree. And therefore you have to go back in and figure out why. That would be for the general categories of good, bad, and good, medium, and bad. Okay. So, if we take a look at this, what we've got is we focused right down into the whole, the precise values of these factors. And yet, the introduction is supposed to tell us, for example, why we did it. Okay? So now, having gone focused into, and this is just from the compendium that's online. It's also under supplemental materials if you didn't find it before. And this is it. So basically, you want to tell us why this is an interesting research subject and how you approached it. So in most of your cases, the municipality came up with a question. But that question is all you got. Now you have to take the broader aspect and find out why they asked this question at all, and not just for that site, but how relevant it is in a broader aspect, okay? So for example, I'll take the easy part right now, Lille Lungegårdsvann. Okay, because that one's going to be interesting to read. And we can see already now. Basically, Lillelunga-Gozvan had exactly the same parameters to measure as everybody else. And they had a time series, like most of you also did. And now they found something completely different. Okay, now this means that when you're writing the introduction, which you do after you know the results, you're trying to put it into another context. So now your question that you're answering isn't just the overall, is it good enough, but your question can actually be even bigger. How easily does a freshwater pond change its ecosystem by the introduction of one key species? That's one of the ways you can do it. Okay? So you can start to ask even more interesting questions based on the context of your results. Because looking at this, if I was from the Kommune, I wouldn't know. Because, first of all, I'm not quite sure what all these actually mean, and I'm not quite sure how these things are put into the context of the site that we asked the question about. And please don't forget the question that was asked. But you can put it into a broader context now. And for example, for Store Lynkegaardsvann, where are you? There. For example, you got good TCB, which is marvelous. Surprising, but marvelous. And that means that that what we think of as not a good place to go swimming actually might not be so horrible. And then your question starts to come into how you can rehabilitate recreational areas that are close to or in the city center. So you start to get into the possibility of actually addressing large-scale problems of pollution and human activity and watching how it improves over time. So it's a surprise to me that your TCB values are good. We'll see how that turns out there. If it turns out that they really are good and they show a significant decline over time, then your question would be, is it a durable decline? Is it showing a positive trend in the rehabilitation of Store Lynkegaardsvann? And then we also have this narrowing of the channel right out here, right? Puddefjord and Solheimsviken is getting narrower and being built out, which means that the flow of water is getting restricted, which means that possibly down at the bottom you're going to get a change, not in the E. coli, but in the oxygen profiles, right? So these stories that you're starting to build up, because this is exactly what you're doing. You are building up a story from a couple of small measures that you have to a bigger context. What can we really explore? What larger question have we addressed? So, for example, Iglevan, yeah, your mystery stream, right? Yeah. And that's between two sections that have extremely high E. coli values, 7 times the maximum value. And the municipality was suspecting mystery stream. Weren't they suspecting that maybe that mystery stream was carrying high E. coli to there?
But actually, surprisingly, they were expecting. Actually, they divided the Iglevan into two parts. The right part was good. I mean, was
they
bad, and the other part was the worst one. But surprisingly, the stream that's carrying the highest value of the E. coli was at the side of the bad one.
Okay.
And so this is something need to be explained.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, if I remember Marie's statement correctly, this is close to an elementary school. It's like 15 meters from an elementary school.
Quite a portion from
right. So this also then has a social aspect. It's like, not only do you want the ecosystem to be happy, you also don't want little kids to go down there and go, like so, because they will get sick. Yeah. So there's that aspect there. Your story can be built around how this water is being used and how to detect the source of of the contamination that can affect the health of children. Yes, and so you have a very solid way of approaching this, and then you're doing the detective work with this.
Yeah.
So now these stories become more interesting. Okay, what about you guys? Haukås, that's a pretty easy story to tell too. Yeah, you want to?
What was the question I'm gonna ask?
The context of Haukås, you know, and
well, of course, they are trying to reintroduce the mussels.
yes,
That's sort of the red line for us.
right,
And that's also why we do this. Like, is it possible?
right.
And of course, we think it's very sad that we don't have poor oxygen this year.
That you don't have poor oxygen? Oh,
No.
oh yeah, poor water.
Yeah, poor water.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
poor water oxygen. Yes, it's true.
So, but still, we do the best out of what we have.
Yeah.
That's why I want the fish on the table.
Yes,
That was
yes.
important.
Yes, it is.
And but also it's surprising to see when the municipalities say that this is rivers we know that are well-known sources of pollution, and we find sort of drinking water there.
Right. Right.
And
I've also seen that conflict of their statement, our data. It repeats itself over the years. Their statement, our data, completely different. And so the question then being, what is the data that backs up their statement? Okay. So,
but this is like we are taking, I guess the municipality maybe also do just a snapshot
yes.
measurement. And of
Yes.
course, we had very nice weather this autumn.
Yeah.
I guess in a rainy year, / common year, things might change.
Yes.
But of
yes.
course, we just have one day sample.
Yeah.
Things can change.
But you also
rapidly.
have a couple of years of previous data as well.
Yes,
But
all
you
over.
don't-
But we have,
Yeah.
but we changed sites, at least this year, because they want us to look on some new sites.
Right.
Where,
Yeah.
especially one site was completely new and far off the river actually. But
Oh, wow.
they were
Oh, is that where they're making that little loop, or?
no, it's just a side stream coming down from a marshy area.
Oh, by the way, I have a contact for you, a previous student from here who's now working with the rådgivende biologer, Eivind Schachtum, and he's got pictures of the new hide, or the new place where they're trying to put out the freshwater pearl mussels, and his thesis, his master's thesis, was on that. So he is a very good contact to call and talk with about these results. Okay, Eivind Schachtum, S-C-H-A-R-T-U-M.
I got it right.
Yeah, okay, and he's at rådgivende biologer. Yeah, say hello. And so he knows, he's got new pictures of what it looks like there. He also has done his thesis on these freshwater pearl mussels and sort of understands the context in which this is done. So that'll give you the extra dimensions, in a way, that you need to put it into context, even without the poor water. The poor water oxygen is an important thing to measure, and even though you guys didn't get to go there, the people who are responsible for that equipment said that if Grønnetaten gives them enough warning, they will gladly come out and make the measures. So it could be that before you have to hand in the report, which is mid-December, you can get some extraneous, extra poor water measures. That just means contact Håvard Bjordal and tell him that this is possible, and that he should he just has to pick a date, and we'll see if it can be done. Yeah. So you get these extra things, because now this is not just an exercise for you. This is real. People are going to use it. Put it into context, and that's school. That is really important. And the change of the ecosystem in Lille goes on. Everybody sees that. Find out what you can. You know, and now it's getting to a place where you're building up the story. These are, okay, this looks really dry, frankly. If you weren't doing it, and even when you are doing it, you look at this and it's really dry. But the context and what it really tells you is something completely different. So, for example, Store Lundgårdsman, where are you? Oh, no, we did you, right. Galpos, where are you? There. So what's your, what was the question that was originally asked for you?
The concern mainly for recreational.
For recreational use, yeah.
Yeah, use. So it looks like it's good for that. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. And how
We
much
didn't get
recreation
any-
is around there?
Huh?
How much recreation is around there?
Oh, there's a lot, like fishing and hiking and yeah, there's
Okay.
a lot of activities.
Right. So basically, yours is.
And swimming.
Yeah. So yours is looking like a recreational paradise. Like there's.
According to
Mhm.
our samples, yeah.
Right.
But we obviously have to compare a little bit with
Mhm.
previous years.
Are there any construction sites coming?
Yes.
Power plant also.
A power plant?
No, it is
Which
one
reg-
there.
It regulates the water level in the like Garpos Lake.
Right.
And
But they are building a road. I think they're improving the highway or something.
Okay. But there's no building a school or a suburb or anything like that?
Not that we know of.
Okay. Right. And so all these values, they're like all okay? They're not even like moderately putting up a yellow flag? They're
Not
wonderful?
really.
Okay.
one is like on the edge, I think.
Right.
But too moderate. But
Mhm.
and some of the biodiversity samples are also like fair
Mhm.
and moderate, but
Oh, that sounds great.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically it's
Dang.
Nothing
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Huh. This is gonna be good news for them.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
like it.
Right. So, that means we should sort of, if there's ever a Freelifts sort of cafeteria or whatever that's built out there, you know, make sure that it's a compost toilet and things like that, because this is really good. Yes. All right. Interesting. I wondered if you can get numbers from the Kommune about sort of how often this place is used for a recreational area, or what the neighborhood is and so on. So find out, because this makes me want to go. You know, how many places here are accessible for things like swimming? How easy is it to get in there and out there? How often, you know, things like that. So you put it into a context that makes it look, people use it, right? Right. Okay. And who have we not done? Oh yeah, there. Okay. Yes.
Or take on the district. We have a population of sea trout there, which is quite. The populations are quite stressed in a way.
Okay.
So,
Sea trout. Yes, that's actually very
and,
good.
They have this. They built light rail path.
Oh, the Vibana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in February 2014, they had a great slam spill there. So
Mud.
I don't think it's pretty. But
Yeah.
so we're going to focus on sea trout and their situation there,
Right.
and comment on physical things like the pipes there being blocked and things like that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's I think that's a very, very good focus. And do you want to expand on that so that everybody understands?
on the sea trout problem.
Yeah, on the focus and on why you're talking about the pipes and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're the Spanish Speaking is a breeding ground for sea trout, and
Which is endangered.
yeah, endangered because they're more vulnerable to sea lice infestations from agriculture and so on, because they don't go into the ocean like salmon does. And
Well then, wait a minute. Sea trout, freshwater lice don't work. Lice and freshwater don't go together. Sea lice and freshwater don't go together.
Yeah.
And when you're saying, what you just said was that
I guess they migrate to the sea.
they do, they do.
Yeah, yeah. So they do move to the sea, but they don't swim to Greenland.
No.
Like this regular salmon. So they tend to keep in the areas where the farms could be and things like that. So
Right.
they don't escape.
Right, now, exactly. So if you focus on the sea trout, that's one angle, but be careful how you write and present exactly that sort of interaction fish farms. We have no data about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we are going to talk too much about it. We know
Probably
that they're
not.
pretty endangered and that keeping their breeding places nice at least.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yes.
I know that in 2013 they had to carry them up past some hinders and so on. So
Yeah, literally, in buckets carrying them. Yes.
So it seems like it's quite important for the municipality.
Yes.
So I thought I'd send some mails to people in Grønnetat and ask them if there's any supplementary
material
stuff about this. Which
yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay, and this approach now as well about asking for supplementary material and background information, that's exactly what you should be doing. Because this is not an in-class activity anymore where I have all the answers and where I just supply you with the material that has the answers in it. Now it's real world, it's up to date, and it's linked outside. And we are trying to aid the municipality in doing something that aids the community. And that is relative both to people and to conservation and so on. And so these questions now, your raw data is your raw data, and it points to certain aspects of the water that you're in there. That you've investigated. But those certain aspects are also in a much larger context. And like we saw, for example, with the critical reading exercises, those larger contexts are what determines the response to your writing, okay? So now we want to put it into that larger context in the introduction, and we'll start workshopping your introductions after a 15-minute break, okay? Okay.
Släta. Köper en kaffe. Jag får gå på kaffe.
Right, but not significantly.
Side 3, which was
This sounds like it's going to be a very easy to put together a story. Yeah,
it all makes kind of sense. It's going to be
right, me too.
fish don't mind it.
Yeah, so.
And maybe the fish just move there. Maybe it's weird there. I'm going to die when we go with it. It's probably like a broken sewer pipe or something. One of the houses is very old.
I think we got two cases from two sides. This one and this one.
Yeah.
The bad side.
Yeah.
Started taking some of them.
Yeah, those are controlled. Those usually like.
Yeah. I think for the past, I was still wondering because we got a lot of these speeches have actually 18 or
Yeah.
18 orders running 12 families and about 8 classes. So, although there is a high, what to say, high variation in biodiversity, but it's still Texas experiencing, showing a very low index in the product biodiversity. Yeah. It's a mystery. Exactly.
Hi, Prakash. How are you?
I'm good.
Where are you sitting when the ring?
Sorry?
With the alarm?
Oh, I just down over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Okay.
And then I found what's actually happened over there. Do you found what happened over here and then why somebody in the ground floor in the corridor actually the E block there is smoke. Yeah, so it means
Inside the building?
yeah, inside the building.
They should know there is something like that. How did they
Yeah,
shut it off?
I guess it is intentional.
Intentional?
Yeah, probably. Some people are like that. Because everybody know that even at smokes inside the building. But the guy smokes inside the building.
How did they shut it off?
Yeah, it's the representative from SIV. He just in that place, he found where the problem is, and he just had done something over there. By opening something, I don't know what's that actually. Okay. He can do that, I guess, and he did.
I was watching a movie and I'm just about to sleep when the ring came. I was so worried because I thought this is coming from my apartment, but I was
No,
not cooking. I was
actually that is the horrible sound and then a terrible place.
Yeah.
Isn't that? And then so loud because in other day when it just make a rain, that will cover one block. For example, perhaps if it is in E block, then the E block will ring, or even in one side or something like that in the corridor. But
Ja, men hvis jeg venter et par minutter, så er det fortsatt on-time, samtidig som jeg slipper å bruke øyeblikket, ikke sant? Det er konseptet. Ja, våkne noen 10 minutter på...
because they are party.
Hvordan går det?
Har ikke tenkt å si noe.
Because it is like that, isn't it?
Altså, det eneste som negativt med størrelsestegn, i forhold til det at jeg må gå nesten en gang, det er at...
Yeah, because I think maybe
It's sorry, it's entertaining.
check if
De gangene jeg lager ferdig på men jeg synes egentlig det går helt greit å bare stå med den, så bare jeg legger ut og legger alt.
Oh, no. Actually,
Det er ikke med. Klarer å se
So when she's coming
det er det eneste som ikke er på kalenderen. I dag så blir det
sorry. Oh, no. Actually, I have said
Picture plan.
Because in that paper, in that beginning mentioned that we should have because we do not have to send the back anymore. So
If there are some
I got something from the now I have an envelope, signing envelope in my hand. Just I just asked them about going to the meeting. You will check Friday, and then they said that you will get on Monday or Tuesday. They told me that.
Okay, so should I expect this in my first day?
Yeah, you can. No. If you want to they can say that whether your document is ready or not in the flow, or when it was ready in the flow, and then my document was ready in October. They can say that whether your document is ready. If you will be able to. So if not problem, you can check regularly post jobs. It's the
and based on what I work on sampling with the elders, I don't think I have from the survey and the bottom.
Det eneste som er det var en leder jeg husker ikke hvor det var. Det var en sak for et par år siden, og det var en leder i Frelsesarmeen som var hjelpe homofile.
I reviewed your exam yesterday.
Yes, I've done.
And then you
want to forget my clear.
You found
I was asked to do this. I went out and then when I tried to do then I went back. Very fast.
you have a right muscle room.
Yeah, it's actually
You have a little then it is muscle room. And you have 2 keys, right? 2 keys, you have 2 keys. So what you can do is that you can just place your key in your friend room. Or if you do something because most of the like this, they have one is they have the one they place the other
This is quite convenient. But actually, I applied to internal transfer. I went to bachelor apartment and stayed in this apartment.
You got I got that from November 18th.
Okay, you are moving.
Now I have to stay one night. Now
Det var masse
and then extra yeah. So I did that, yeah, because I didn't understand. So this theory because there is
TCB or equalize and because we need
probably or to phrase of
explain and so I think maybe we
and then this would put two
yes, maybe.
I don't know what what you can do is that the image and then
So I can send them
I found
actually I applied in 15 September, it's 1 month and then and then send the
no, 6 or 7 lectures in this semester because I mean it's 5 credits and most of them are going to I mean only have one more
and then they immediately send me something and they say that you can yeah. So you can write a bit soft
Maybe we should take the
no, you can
because I wonder because it's a long time and if I live in the shed and I have that fun but I don't know exactly when I come back
Journalister som har skrevet på stykker plutselig forsvinner, så er det jo skal ikke så var det sånn folk som prøver å bryte på det settet.
department and they say it is mistake. So they must have to try in the best department. So many of them yeah, but because it is so
As messy.
Because they do not do anything clean or anything related to the other things.
Okay, so. Okay. When you're writing the introduction, okay, it's those two questions there. Why is this an interesting research project, and why do you perform this? In this case, it says experiment, but in your case, it's a field study. Okay, so it's not an experiment, it's a field study. And that's the basic reason why you write the introduction. And so now we've already begun to circle into why you did this field study. And you can put it into a larger context, right? For example, Haukos is really easy. It's about restocking endangered species. Steinbeksbecken, pretty easy too. It's about the sea trout, among other things. And Stora Lindrosvan, that's about city rehabilitation of city, close to city recreational areas. And Galpos, further away, recreational areas. Rogesvai, that can be interesting because that's both a recreational area and a residential area. And the pipes for Rogesvai have been changed recently. So there's also the rehabilitation aspect. And Iglevan, again, that's a pretty straightforward one. It's about tracing the sources of pollution that are dangerous to especially child human health. And Ushivansvan, interesting that combination of low biodiversity and low phosphorus as well as low nitrogen. What else could Vishuansvan be looking at? Where are you? There, yeah.
We were supposed to look at the septic tanks and if they're affecting the water quality.
Right.
So, but it doesn't look like.
Doesn't look like it from the first go around, but maybe it, you know. We'll take a look because I'm still going to go through your results and I'll be handing them back the way I did materials and methods. But that's one of the ways to start looking at it. And you also have to be looking at it when you are writing your discussion. You have to be looking at it backwards, like how much it's changed over the years, and you have to test if there's significant differences and so on. And you have to really think: is there a reason why my results or your results this year look that way? Is it exceptional? Is it part of a trend? Is it something that is responding to the differences in construction around the water, or the differences in the use of the water? Okay, so this is putting it back into the context. And that means that when you're looking for literature, both for the discussion and the introduction, you're looking for things that relate to either that problem or those specific values that you're reading, or that you've recorded. And so. This is from the compendium. And you do want, up there it says, let's see, here I got it. That part there. Okay, easily understand the historical context. And the whole point here again is easily understand. Put it into a context so that we understand that this is important to deal with, and it's not something that's suddenly come up. It's something that has a background, it has a history. And certainly, pretty well all of your waters have a history here. And there's something to be found on them, okay? If your work is interdisciplinary, or you can do a literature study or a subchapter of the introduction. If what you need is specific, okay? So in your cases, maybe Ivan has, for Haukos, maybe Ivan has some background information on the freshwater pearl mussel that, of course, is not part of your data, but is relevant to the interpretation of your data. So maybe you want a little subchapter about that in your introduction, because it's going to come back and play for your discussion. Okay, and this is an important thing here. Okay, that part. round off about saying something about the method used, okay? And that means that there's a structure to this introduction, okay? It rounds off about how you actually did the field study. So there's a natural transition from your introduction to the materials and methods. And very often, that if you look in scientific literature, the last sentence of the introduction says, we chose to examine this by looking at such and such and such over a series of time or in an experimental design, and then materials and methods goes into the details about how. So very often the last bits of introduction actually set the stage for materials and methods. That also means that when you're writing the discussion, you're doing the opposite. Oh, sorry. Let me see. Hang on a second. Okay. So if this is your introduction, it starts out broad, and it goes narrow, making that natural transition to materials and methods. Materials and methods goes like so. And results, as you already know, goes like so. Pretty straightforward. And then, what you're going to have to do is that with discussion, okay? So you're going to have to start out narrow and broaden. So you have to come in, focus, and take it back out into context. Okay? So this means that studying rivers, if it's rivers that you're after, or if it's rehabilitation of rivers, that's a huge topic. Go and pick. If it is residential impacts on faraway places that perhaps are not hooked up to the municipal sewage system, there's plenty of studies about that. And that might be the way that you approach it. Okay? So when we're talking about there, that's your general structure. Okay? So that means you have to start digging into the literature. And not just looking at background reports, but also digging into the literature and finding out what's there and what's useful. Obviously, using last year's reports for hints of what they found was useful is a good place to start. And then you start searching the way that Hege, the librarian, showed you how to go search the literature. But also, remember those 21 questions. Not everything you find is really useful. Not everything you find will have a robust experimental design. Not everything you find will be easily readable even. Okay, so you want things that, that you're comfortable with, that you feel are reliable enough and comfortable with. And I know that some of the literature you find is going to be hard to read. Think about it. Does it tell you clearly what you want to know? And it's often in the introduction or discussion that you'll find out about it. You know? But the materials and methods will be important. So how many of you started looking at the literature? All right. I'm impressed. Okay, what were your key words?
Actually, I've searched about the Egli-Vatin, but obviously there's no previous work than Egli-Vatin. Also, I checked all the previous reports, and none of them have nothing to do with the Egli-Vatin.
Right.
So the one reference will be for us is the Peruvian Commune.
Okay, that's one way to look at it. And that's looking for the site-specific information, and that's absolutely correct. Then, if you're looking at the scientific literature, what would your keywords be? What would your search words be?
Sewage, shoreline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yes. Low biodiversity indexes.
That might work.
And
you could combine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But also remember, relatively speaking, up in Norway, there's not a whole lot of sewage runoff. Relative to what we see in other places, this is it's really good.
Maybe the impact of contaminated water on the scourge tree.
that might be the easiest way to go, yeah. So children's susceptibility to high E. coli exposure.
Yeah.
Also, you can add the detective work, tracing the sources of E. coli contamination, or of bacterial contamination in fresh water. Okay. How about, for example, Chris? What would be your search words?
Of course, first thing is the TCB.
Yeah, you'll find millions of articles on TCB.
Yes.
You will.
And I think the keywords contains what we have done in the research.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what you've done in research, in the research aspects here, all of this has thousands of articles. And so you have to start narrowing it down to the context that you're interested in.
Okay.
Yeah.
TCB, biodiversity, phosphorus. Yeah, I think so.
I'll show you here. Hang on a second. Okay. Okay, I'm into scholar.google.com. Let's do this. TCB, biodiversity. What else?
Phosphorus. Yeah. And plankton.
What?
Plankton. Okay.
Is it fresh water or is it salt water? Fresh water?
Fresh water.
Or is it brackish?
Brackish, yeah.
It's brackish?
Yeah.
Whoops, spelled it wrong. So, 35 results. Something about Lille Lungegårdsvann from last year. And Selinvann. And then there's in Norwegian the recipient investigation at Randsfjord. Concentrations of Vibrio bacteria in sediment, water, and oysters. This might be interesting for Haukås, because Vibrio will affect the mussels. You know what Vibrio gives you? Okay, there's lots and lots and lots of Vibrio bacteria. Among them, Vibrio angularum, which also will affect fish farms and so on, and Vibrio cholera, which affects us, quite obviously. So there's a whole broad spectrum of diseases caused by Vibrio bacteria. And there again, Vibrio species and so on. And ballast water. So there's things in here with just those keywords that are relevant and things that are not relevant. Okay? So there's even things from other places about the microbiology, which we have, and the coliophages, so the coliform bacteria, and the physical chemical, the abiotic aspects of the water in a South African system. So here they're talking about biodiversity conservation in South Africa. That may or may not be relevant to you. So, and one thing about, it's in a book, environmental quality of estuaries. There's things like that you can also use to give a sort of context for the whole thing. There's one that might be interesting. Models for wetland planning, design, and management. So that's some of the stuff. Then there's abstracts from sessions and so on. What surprises me is that there's so many PDFs here. So you can just go straight to that and then find out what it was actually published in and why. And that was just with those keywords. Let's have a couple of others. What would you choose?
I think think maybe I wouldn't go with all the different factors at once. For example, phosphorus, freshwater fish, or salmonid, depending on if I can find anything for salmonids. Maybe larval development, depends.
Yeah. There's a response of the insects, which would affect then the food availability for the hatched sea trout.
I think I could probably focus on insects and so on because those are just as important for the salmon.
So there, your insect biodiversity, if you have any, can maybe give you a clue. Of course, ours was collected in the fall, and you'd have to think about when the sea trout actually hatch, which is usually in the spring. Yeah, and so the composition might be different, probably is, yeah, as well as the density. So you have to match the hatching season and the season that they're going to be using it with the season you took the samples at, which is different. How about you? What would you use?
Yeah. Because we see a conflicting result from our result. So firstly, I think we need to search more information about how exactly we collect TCB from surface or bottom. So yes, compare CTV on mixed water.
We've got a bowhead whale in there. That's interesting. Okay, and there's lots of stuff that will come up that isn't relevant, but there's lots of stuff that will. Let's see.
In fresh water.
Oops, that won't work.
'Can you just use TCB freshwater surface?
Yep.
Yeah.
2,600 articles, right? And so you have all kinds of things. Effects of freshwater release to a marine bay, because there's a density difference and it'll stratify. So you have that as well. You're going to have to look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There, surface and gut of marine copepods, for example.
And after that, I think we need to find out how, because we found a lot of Daphnia and copepods in the water.
Yeah.
And both and some indices of biodiversity we find out. For example, at
ASTP,
Saron index also indicate that biodiversity is low, is poor.
Yeah.
And I want to find out supporting information from the presence of Daphnia and copepods in water.
Let's see.
Yes.
Oh, well, we're down to 11. There's a good one.
Yeah. It's the same.
Yeah, that can be useful for all of you.
Yeah. Aquatics, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and different systems, different search engines, because Google learns how you search, right? So what I get up isn't necessarily what you'll get up. And there you have another one.
Yeah.
course, that's nanomaterials. Rivers in boreal uplands, possibly. Pathogenic Vibrio in the marine and estuarine environment. That might work. This would probably be good for you guys to leave it, this one here. Pathogenic Vibrio.
And I think we can put more keyword like that. Septic tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see. If we do. Then we get more results.
Yeah.
Yeah. 41. Chemical principles of environmental pollution. Microbial, no, it's geochemical. The atolls, no, that wouldn't work. So you have to keep searching. But remember, all we're doing now is looking at the titles. So the title of your stuff is also going to make an impact on whether or not somebody goes click or not, right?
Yeah.
So all we're doing is looking at the titles and possibly a little bit of the content. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's one. So that looks pretty relevant, actually. And it looks like there should be something in there that might be actually comparable to the situation you've got. Yeah. So these strategies for management, sometimes they're good and they hold solid principles, and sometimes they're just cobbled together. But it makes a difference to how you interpret your results and how you go forward. Okay? And you'll be wanting to use a combination of keywords. For example, let's see. 30,000 references when I go to rehabilitation. And this is under scholar.google, right? So these are supposed to be articles that are not generally put out on the web. They're articles that then go a little bit deeper into the topic. There'll be way more if you go to Google. And this one, for a large ecosystem, there's that one. There's that one too. And that's subtropical. So we can add temperate. And we're only getting down to 15,000. So we've eliminated the tropical waters. Okay? And so we have to go through there. So it's starting to build the story around your results here. So this dry stuff here is dry stuff here, and these are numbers, and they're what you're going to be analyzing solidly in the results chapter, which you'll probably do a couple of times after I've seen them. But you're starting to build the context and starting to see your own results in a bigger story, in a global way, because the quality of the water that we have is a global problem. Everybody's looked at it. Everybody everywhere. So your problem will be finding the references that are exactly supporting your story. And that's how you build a good introduction. And in fact, when you're doing your master's thesis, even if your master's thesis goes to hell in a handbasket, as in everything dies, something beyond your control, everything dies, or you find out afterwards that at the beginning of the setup of the experiment you've got some significant difference between the day zero of one group and the day zero parameters of the rest of the group. You know, even if that happens, making it really difficult for you to analyze your results, or at least to conclude something positive. If you can write your story well, and you understand what you did, you still get a good grade. You can still get an A. You can write your way to an A, even if the experiment has technically failed, because the experiment will not have been your fault. Usually it's your supervisor that gives it to you. And so if things turn out to be not quite good, such as life. If things die, that really is life. But you can still write your way to an A if you understand how to build the story and what the elements are that actually have to be in there. So you evaluate it, put it into context. Know what you did wrong, what it means. Okay? So, there. Lake Rehabilitation Techniques and Experiences. A really old book, but it's still available. Only cited by 7? Okay. And that's another thing. Ooh, there you go. You can look at how many cited it, which means how many used this thing, how many found it important. 226. That's, I think, the highest rate on this page. And it's a book, okay? World and Environmental Resources Congress, Great Rivers. Only cited by 1. Oh, well, there you go. Australian streams, yes, they're doing it. Linking flow regime and water quality in rivers. That sounds like it might be relevant. 64 cited it. Could be good. So there's absolutely things here. There's quite a lot that's here. And you have to figure out what is closest to your situation now. So lots of places have been looking at rehabilitation of water. But water is many things. So now narrow it down to your situation. Okay? And this means that while you are looking through the literature, and while you're searching through the terms, and you're downloading articles, you end up downloading a lot more than you actually use. And that's completely normal. But download it on the way, because you'll see something that might be useful. Okay? So you start building up a little library of your own references, and you should be starting this week. Sort of poke around and find out what you can find about the methods, about anything like that, about conflict between biodiversity indices results, about ways to collect E. coli and what the differences might be in the water column generally, whether or not there's freshwater, saltwater, that kind of thing. All those little things can add up into something that builds a much bigger story. So when you're looking at the literature, don't just look at the big context, because this right now is a big context. Rehabilitation of water, that's a big context, and you will get lots. Look also at the small context, the comparison of indices, comparison of values, comparison of standards even, validity of standards, how it was done, alternate ways, and also what other key environmental parameters could you have measured that would have given a much more concrete result, like the pore water, which you didn't get, but maybe you can still, who knows. So that you start to look at what you measured and what you didn't measure, and in the end, you will be making a recommendation for next year's groups, and also that recommendation that the municipality should pay attention to. And the municipality is starting actually to pay attention to this stuff, what comes out of this class, because it's good. It's solid, repeatable, and good. So we want you to start to build it up, start to find out what's weak, what's strong, what the methodologies are, where your planning was good, where your planning was not so good. Because you've all got results now. And now it has to be put into a form that makes sense. But it also has to be thoroughly analyzed, which is why it takes me some time to go through the results chapter. I'm going to be doing it this week. I'll probably be, since I'm away from Tuesday, I'll probably be sending it back to your TA to send to you, a scanned version of this. But we'll see how that goes. And with concrete suggestions for what to change, what to keep looking at, and so on, and what to test, for example. But right now, what you're going to have to get used to is using the literature. Because the next 2 chapters are the discussion and the introduction, based on the work you already know, And now you have to take a bigger look at it. So this is why we've gotten that sort of build up in the critical reading. Now you practice, now you know you can do it. Now you just got to sift through the millions of articles that are there to find something that is useful. Okay? So, you're all looking at me with blank faces. Any questions, concerns, and all that stuff? You might as well do it now. I'm not here the rest of the week. For example, for your water system, when you've been talking about it in the group, anything in particular come up?
We have a lot of discussion of the phosphorus values, and also since there have been a decline in the TCB, so try to link it up, especially the phosphorus, because they were extremely high compared to other years.
Right.
So what is this actually telling us?
Right.
And yeah, also for TCB as well, because we've seen the decline, especially this year and last year, was under 100.
Yeah, that's impressive.
But all the other years was extremely high.
Yes, yes.
So it's really interesting to see.
Yeah.
But also maybe to link it up to pollutions, because you know we heard about different pollution, for example, PCB and other dioxins. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, right. So questions like, there. Things like that. Sometimes the ideas and the answers come up just by the search words. There's something interesting right down there. A modification of the phosphorus index. Maybe. So there's a lot of stuff out there. Anybody else have something that you guys were discussing in the group? Okay, David?
I haven't gotten to that part.
Okay. Yeah?
When we analyze biodiversity result, we measure some of biodiversity index, and we found that when we see when we saw on the data, it shows different from the size. I mean, when index biodiversity index in the side 1 is different from biodiversity from the side 2. Maybe it's double or higher. But when we analyze on
the
statistic,
it
shows
it's
not
different.
significant different.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a question about maybe I don't know exactly, maybe it's from the sampling, because maybe different from different within replication higher than within side 1 or side 2. So
yeah, and that's in fact a very good point, and that's why I put in these search words. But I'm not quite sure I get what I want here. There. So because you have things that will be mathematically significantly different. And sometimes you'll have things that mathematically, or at least statistically, will not be significantly different. And that's a difference that is based on the test and the quality of the test and so on. However, if like site 1 has 2 species and site 2 has 15, it's clear that there is a difference, but relative to like 1,000 species, is not that big of a difference. So you have statistical meaning and biological meaning. Yeah. And so, for example, if there's no significant difference between your TCB values at all sites, or at some sites in any case, it still might be that those non-significant differences put it into the category of not recommended or unacceptable. And there you have that non-significant, non-statistically significant difference, but biologically important. And please remember, you are biologists. We're testing things that have quantitative values, but we're biologists, and we're reporting this stuff to humans, biological beings, for whom these things make a difference. Statistically, that makes a big difference too, whether it really is higher or lower. And that's important to say, whether it really is, according to the test, higher or lower, or different in one form or another, but higher or lower usually. And then putting it back into context. So there's quite a number of questions that come up through analyzing your own data, and it's quite clear you can keep analyzing for quite some time. But find the most relevant things that you want to focus on, and start focusing now. It is going to take you quite some time to develop your story. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to start using the literature and filter it now. Start building your own little library about what it is you want. Some things about the results, some things about the methodologies, some things about comparisons. Okay? And if you need help to find out whether something is relevant or not, come and ask. This Friday, when you're talking with your TAs, then you should also be talking with them about the context of the story. Some of you have TAs who have been doing this before, and that's great, because that will really, really help. And I'm sure Carrie's done Lillelunga Goes On 3 times now, and that will really help you build the story. And some of you have TAs who are new and sites who are new. And that developing the story means bouncing ideas off them. That means talking with them specifically about your results and finding out where the story is. We'll be doing a lot of stuff about finding the story, especially as we start to prepare for the final presentations. But yeah, that'll come later. Okay, that's enough for today. Talk to the rest of your groups. And you know, this is obviously online now, or will be. Yeah, see you in about a week. And I'll see the rest of the groups who are meeting artists today, starting at 11. Okay.
Nej.
I have a
You guys go up there, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Karin, skal du være med oss og Lars i dag? Så du vet hvem det er?
Oh ja.
Ja.
Det er klokken 12.
Ja, da går vi bare til deg. Så finner du Lars.
Ja, nemlig. Ja.
So 11.
Har du noen idé på hvordan vi skal gjøre det? Kanskje ikke skal ha den med. Om ideer hvordan vi skal gjøre det. What do you do?
Tell a story about how, like, questions to solve,
And yeah, I saw
Yeah, but we could always do something kind of yeah. So we could like have a guide and me always follow you. That would be
Because Kabatani, they are I don't know where Emma is now. I don't know if she's coming because she was at home this weekend.
Where is she?
She was in Vik,